In the darkest hours of January 2nd, the US raided Caracas, taking the Venezuelan president, Maduro, into custody. What happens next depends on many factors. But what we can do now is understand America's interests in Venezuela and Latin America. This video will be exploring these interests, providing our perspective and facts for you to form your own opinion and an outlook of where this is or could be going. Welcome to the Venezuela Attack Video Explained. So, to start with, why did this happen? Well, there are four main logics at play here that start from the fringes of the Indo-Pacific and Atlantic Oceans to the US southern border. The first is to avoid foreign interventions in the US backyard. This mainly targets Iran, which has ties to Venezuela through Hezbollah. As discussed previously in another video, not only does Hezbollah directly operate in the Latin America country, but they also brought the same drones that were used against Ukraine and commercial ships in the Red Sea. Now, these drones are also produced in Venezuela, and if left unchecked, they could become a cheap way to threaten the US shipping and oil exports out of the Gulf of Mexico. At the same time, the move on Venezuela also concerns Russia and China military relations with Caracas. The United States enjoys advantageous geographical conditions, with only 2 land borders. On the other hand, both China and Russia have the most land borders on Earth. To decrease this asymmetry, both China and Russia have been using countries geographically close to the US to host some of their weapon systems, which can potentially become a threat to the US. Following this logic, both countries are Venezuela's major military partners. Russia has solid air defense systems and various equipment, and even deployed strategic bombers capable of launching nuclear weapons as recently as 2018. China, on the other hand, has sold air defense radars to Venezuela, marketing them as being capable of detecting low observable aircraft, which, given the results, might not be so effective. China was also discussing exporting J-10CE fighter jets. In August 2025, a Chinese spy ship also collected data off from Venezuela's coast. From the United States' perspective then, driving Russia and China out of Venezuela would be essential in stabilizing the US security environment, very close to its main center of gravity, so to speak. The second reason is, well, oil. Venezuelan oil is not really intended to be used in the United States, but rather to impact its adversaries. America doesn't really need to take over Venezuelan oil. First, the United States is already the world's largest oil producer. Second, they already import Venezuelan oil. And third, the Venezuelan oil is sour heavy, and to use it in anything other than making roads, it must be first mixed with sweet light oil, which the US has plenty of. Okay, so what's the real reason behind the Venezuelan oil? Well, the control of Venezuelan oil mainly targets Cuba and China. In December 2025, Venezuela's oil exports exceeded 900,000 barrels per day, with 80% of that going to China, 16% to the US, and then 4% to Cuba. So the US has multiple goals here then. First, it aims to cut cheap oil exports to China, which already benefits from low-cost oil supplied by Russia. Venezuela and Russia made up about 5% and 13%, respectively, of China's total oil consumption in December 2025. China paid for Venezuelan oil in renminbi, not US dollars. This helped its economy and promoted its currency abroad, competing against the US dollar, which is kind of the gold standard for oil transactions. Next, it seeks to control oil exports to Cuba and make it more open to listen to US interests. Cuba has heavily relied on Venezuelan oil for about 25% of its total oil consumption. In exchange, Havana provided security and intelligence capabilities to Venezuela. Lastly, the possible rise in oil production might aim to challenge OPEC and its artificial prices. And this could also pressure the Russian economy, as it depends heavily on oil exports. It might serve as a negotiation tool in the Ukraine peace talks. Third, The US can use Venezuela as a model to influence the region. This sends a message to Cuba, Colombia, Mexico, Nicaragua, and Panama, warning them to stay aligned with the US to maintain regional stability. Cuba poses the closest geographical threat. It not only sits at the entrance to the Gulf of Mexico, but it is also tied to US adversaries like Russia. In the days when the US administration was considering sending Tomahawks to Ukraine, Russia used the Cuba card, approving a defense agreement as recently as October 2025. The Trump administration has also focused on Panama before, asking them to return the Panama Canal to the US. Washington's main logic here is to eliminate foreign influences that could become a threat to its security. A Chinese company controls the ports along the canal, raising concerns in Washington about possible interference with ship traffic through its waterway. Nicaragua, Mexico, and Colombia also have a direct impact in the stability of the southern border and will be subject to US pressure in the future. The fourth and last reason here is that by securing Venezuela, it also stabilizes the southern border. Gangs use Venezuela to move drugs to Europe, but not move them directly to the US, as most drugs enter by land through the southern border. So, okay, where does Venezuela fit into the picture then? The short answer is that a stable Venezuela would hamper the Mexican cartel business. Mexican gangs get over 80% of their cocaine from Colombia. But the Colombian government, with the help of US agencies, has been carrying out continued raids against coca production and labs. This has been pushing production and refining to more permissive areas at the Venezuelan border with the consent of its military and police. Stabilizing Venezuela and its border with Colombia would cut safe havens to gangs and other non-state actors. So, Trump's Monroe Doctrine aligns with a long-standing US foreign policy in Latin America. From the Bay of Pigs operation to the 1989 invasion of Panama, this strategy has remained consistent for decades. Yet, Trump's actions reflect as a new world order. The role of international law and organizations, such as the United Nations, are increasingly degraded, similarly to the role of allies and partner countries. This approach has both directly and indirectly impacted territories, resources, and commerce. Oil is an example of how the US wants to limit China's influence in Latin American resources while affecting its economy. Likewise, Greenland has been on Trump's agenda for the same reason, to maximize US interests and deny them to adversaries. But that deserves an entire video of its own. Returning to Latin America, the current administration will likely build on this momentum to ramp up pressure on other countries of interest. First on the list could be Colombia, Panama, and Mexico. Further, US actions will also depend on internal conditions. For instance, Maduro lacked majority support as seen in the 2024 election results. This was key for gathering inside information and influencing the political system afterward. Let me know what you think in the comments section about the new Trump-Monroe Doctrine. Also, many thanks to our Latin America expert, who really was in bed when all of this was happening. So, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next one. Ciao.